Erev Tov. So let's continue like we did last week, getting close to Shabbos. Talk about the parasha through the lens of Mesilat Na'aleh, a short from Rabbi Wein. So he says here, he has a piece about Ephron and Ephron. Ephron we know is written, there is only one Ephron Achiti, as he appears in the parasha, but it's written in two different ways. In one place it's written with a vav and afterwards written without a vav. What is the significance to that? So he writes here, Parasha Zanu Pukshim Adam, Nechbad u'mechubad atzil v'amid bal karka b'chevron. We're introduced to this character of nobility. He's rich, he's wealthy, he's a very important and dignified individual by the name of Ephron. We don't know much about him. We don't hear about him anywhere else. We know he owns the land. Avraham Avinu rotzeh liknot mimeno chelkat karka achat, ma'arat ha'machpelah. And of course Abraham comes to purchase from him one piece of land, the ma'arat ha'machpelah. Ephron Mechabedet Avraham Avinu. Now, if you look at the surface, how does Ephron act, and how does he treat, and how does he speak to Avraham? It's all very dignified. It's all very nice, very respectful. Avraham Nasi, Nasi Elokim ata betochenu. You are a prince amongst us. B'nei b'nei. Ephron medaber al Avraham b'rigshay kavod ve'ahada. On the surface, he speaks to him with a lot of kavod, with a lot of honor and respect. He'll do anything for him. Whatever you want for free, you can have it. However, that's not the whole story, we know. It's only half of the story. You look closely, it says that Abraham heard what Ephron was saying, but he heard beneath the surface, he heard between the lines. There's one thing that he was saying, but there's something that's much deeper going on here. Avraham shomea et divrei Ephron lo rak be'oznav, he's really listening, and he can hear in between the lines what Ephron is trying to tell him. What he says, you can have whatever you want. What's between us? What's 400 shekels? We'll see in a moment just how much 400 shekels is going to be. And on the surface, Ephron says, you want the land, take the land, give me whatever you want, it's all for free, you can have it. But there's something more going on. Really, he does not want to give him the land or the cave for free. Says Avram can see, he sees the face of Ephron, he sees the body language, he sees what he's telling him. And he sees the quality of Sdom. What is the quality of Sdom? Sheli, Sheli, V'shelcha Shelcha. That's the Mishnah that we have in Pirkei Avot. The Mishnah over there says that there are 4 different qualities amongst people. If you say Sheli Shelcha or Shelcha Sheli, etc. So the first one it says Sheli Sheli V'shelcha Shelcha. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. There's the Mishnah over there. This is a midah beinonit. This is a intermediate, sort of mediocre. But yesh omrim, those who say that is the midah of Sdom. On the surface, it's like what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. But it's not willing to give anything. He's not willing to give an inch. What's mine is mine, says Ephron to himself, and that's what he says to Abraham, who's sensitive enough to hear. And he says, therefore, what I'm going to give it to you without a price, bli kesef. So Avraham shomea lo rak ta milim shel Ephron ela gam et tzlil kolo. He hears the tone of his voice. He hears his body, sees his body language. Sometimes, it's presented in a very, very nice way. That is, when that is insincere, what's said on the front, that is even more dangerous than when it's presented in not such a nice way. So go see how the Gemara in Bava Metzia. The Gemara says, and this is talking about Ephron, Chazal tell us, Haloshaim mavtichim arbe. We'll see in a moment how this is connected to the Vav and the change in the spelling of the name. But it says, Haloshaim mavtichim arbe ve'inam osim afilu ma'at. The Rishaim in the world, they promise a lot. There's a lot that they say, but what do? They don't do very much. יש אנשים שמבטיחים מתוך כוונה ורצויה בתום לב, ואחר כך בעקבות שינויים במצב אינם יכולים עוד לעמוד בהבטחותיהם. So we're not talking about that. נכון. That's right. So Chazal tell us, Avraham Avinu is exactly the opposite. Abraham says a little, and he does a lot. Ephron is the opposite. He says a lot, but he doesn't do even a little. So sometimes people make promises, and they really, really mean it. I'm going to give you this. I'll do everything for you. And then situations change, a person's not able to keep it. That's not what we're talking about. That's not a rasha. Right? Onesh rachmana patre. Sometimes it happens. Also, there are people, I'm sure we all know people like this, says Rabbi Wein, ישנם גם בני האדם שמבטיחים, וכבר בשעת ההבטחה מקנן בהם החשש שלא יוכלו לעמוד בהבטחותיהם. People who make promises, but you know when they make the promises, they're not going to be able to keep it for whatever reason. but there, ההבטחה ניתנה כנטיית חסד עם הזולת, בתקווה שאולי תהיה אפשרות להגשימה. A person really intends it. A person really means it. I want to be able to help you. But sometimes, the person is just not going to be able to. But here, with Ephron, that's not the case. The case is a person who makes a promise, and from the time that he makes the promise, there is absolutely no intention at all of keeping it. He's saying it, that's what's called gnevat dat. He's saying it in order to keep you happy, to placate you, etc. That's the idea behind Ephron. איש כמו Ephron מבטיח הרבה, כבר בשעת הבטחה הוא יודע שאין לו סיכוי למלא את הבטחו. He doesn't have a chance. He doesn't really have an intention of fulfilling that promise, right? וכל והרבה רק להתפאר. Why does he say those words? Because he wants you to look at him and say, this is a person of chesed, this is a person of wealth, this is a person who's willing to give to everybody, this is a person I should vote for, whatever, right? That's what it's about. It's all a hatzaga. It's all a show. To show everyone that he is this tzaddik, so to speak. Now, throughout this whole section, whenever his name is written, Ephron, it's written with a vav, ayin pei resh, vav nun. And when we get to the end, when Avram purchases the field and the story's over, so then it says, after targil shel Ephron, כשאברהם משלם ל-400 שקל כסף עובר לסוחר, and just to understand how much, 400 shekels doesn't sound to us like so much, but it says here, based on what the research about the period, it says in this generation, a simple worker would earn less than 5 shekels for an entire year. So if you take, right, an annual salary was less than 5 shekels. Yeah, he's giving him in one go 400 shekels. You can work that out. With inflation, how much would that be today? We're talking about a hefty sum of money. So at this point, Ephron's name appears again, but this time it appears without the vav, right? What's the signature? So I heard once somebody said that if you look at the gematria of Ephron without the vav, Ephron with the vav is 406, Ephron without the gematria is 400. Comes to that's exactly the amount that he paid. Okay, but what's the message? What's the message in the fact that Ephron is written with the vav and suddenly the vav disappears? So he says, first of all, it says in the Mechilta that the vav is one of the names, one of the letters of the name of Hashem. Hashem's 4-letter name, Yud K Vav K, right? So the vav. So first of all, Ephron, by acting in this way and in this deceptive manner, again, I'm going to give you the land, whatever you want, take it, let's be happy. And then Avram says, okay, 400 shekels, okay, if you insist, 400 shekels between me and you, what's that? So that's already, he's deceptive, he's cheating, he's lying, that he's lost his chance to have his name attached to Kedusha, to have his name attached to the name of Hashem. But it's more than that. So Rabbi Wein quotes here the name of one of his Rabbeim, Rav Mordechai Rogov Zatzal, that the Vav, he says the Vav that Ephron lost, okay, it's not going to appear in somebody else's name throughout Tanakh, but it's the Vav HaHipuch. Vav HaHipuch Shema'apech Ben Avar La'atid. Very, very interesting. We have in Tanakh, when you have, for example, the word Vayomer, right? You have the Vav at the beginning of a verb, that's called the Vav HaHipuch. You take the word that would have been in the future tense, and the Vav at the beginning turns it into the past tense. That's called the Vav HaHipuch. It changes it. In other words, it connects past with the future. So he says when Ephron lost that Vav, he lost the ability to be able to connect the past with the future. He lost the ability to have his name continue in eternity. He lost the ability to connect his past with his future. The power of eternity. That's what Avraham Avinu has. We spoke about this earlier in the week up north, those who were there, those who might have seen the video. But we said it's very interesting. We continue, the Avot are alive. And the very parasha that talks about Sarah's death is called Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. The parasha that talks about later on, we have Yaakov and Yosef, and later on we deal with death again, and the parasha is called Vayechi, and he lived, which is the parasha where he died. Because the Avot, we say, and Chazal tell us, Mantanit, etc., that the Avot never died. They continue, their legacy lives on, they're eternal. Ephron, what's left of him? We don't even know anything about him. He's just mentioned by the only thing we know about him is that he's a thief, and that he's a crook, and that he's somebody who tries to be very respected and dignified, but he's exactly the opposite. He's completely lost his eternity. He's completely lost his future. רק ידע עפרון שהתורה תכתוב עליו שלקח מאברהם 400 שקל כסף עובר לסוחר בעד הקבר של שרה אימנו. If he had known that this is what's going to be remembered of him, this is going to be what's written of him, שבמשך כל הדורות העולם ידעו הכל איזה טיפוס אוהב ממון הוא. That all that people will know about him in the future is that he loved money and he chased after money. אולי היה מתנהג אחרת. Maybe, if he knew that, then he would act differently. Like Chazal tell us in the Midrash, it's different, talking about righteous people. Well, you know, there's a very well-known Midrash that says certain characters in the Tanakh, Ilu haya yodea. If they had known, it says about Reuven, it says about Aaron, it says about Boaz, Ilu haya yodea. If they had known what was being written about them. So there, it's talking about people who did positive things, but they could have done so much more. Yeah, he's doing something that is so negative, and if he'd known it was being written about, if he was known that's how he would be remembered, maybe it would be different. If he had been able to think what they would say about him in the future, that's that vav ha'ipuch that he lost. Somebody who lives only in the present and in the past, and he has no thought and no concept of what future generations will say about him, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, therefore, he says he loses the vav in his name. That's the message in the Ephron without that vav. He completely loses, that's the depth, that he loses any connection he has to holiness and to sanctity, etc. And then Rabbi Wein mentions here something which he would say a lot, and I'm sure I'll remember this. But he says one of his Rebbeim Yeshiva would tell them, he says at the end of the day, if you've got your past and your future are proud of you, so then you made it. He says like this. He says that the rabbi would look at them and he would say, a person has to think about his life. Says, what do my grandparents think of me? And what are my great-grandchildren going to be? Look 2 generations back and look 2 generations forward. If both of them have relatively positive, decent things to say about you, it would say, then you're doing okay. And that's the idea, and that's what Ephron was completely lost. If all these generations agree generally about you, there's a chance you're doing okay. You're doing right between people, and you're doing right in the eyes of heaven. But if all you can think about, maybe the generations that came before, maybe this generation, but there's no vision towards the future, then all the temptations and all the desires and all the negative drives will take hold of you. And therefore you will lose not only the future, but also the present, and therefore that is what remains of Ephron. As much as he was trying to become wealthy, he ends up actually destitute. He ends up with nothing. The lesson for us is not to go in that path, but to go in the path of Abraham, to keep that vav, to keep that connection between present, past, and future.